is that there's a lot of different things that a quant can do. And the thing maybe I'll talk about specifically for this is sort of what you saw us doing during that video, which was live trading. And, like in many other jobs, there's a bunch of things that are just always good. Being smart, hardworking, conscientious, good communication, those things just help you whatever you're doing. I think that maybe the things that are sort of most specific to sort of real-time quant trading, one of them is definitely, as is in the name, sort of the real-time nature of it. It's really important to fast-paced things. And this isn't necessarily a good or bad attribute of the one in general. Some people really like being under pressure and trying to make quick decisions. Other people really like having time to think something out, as thoroughly as they can and come up with a full plan for something. And those are useful for different tasks. But when you're sort of doing quant trading in real time, you're often like, shit, you got 10 seconds to make a decision. There's an offer, it's on Binance, and it's not going to be there tomorrow. So you can't stand there for the next day, building models. It's going to be gone by then. And, the kind of big thing that you have to do is decide, well, all right, what do we do right now? We don't have complete information. We don't have enough time to figure out exactly what's going on. All that we can do is, either buy it or not and decide which seems better given, everything that we have. So that's probably the most, unique attribute. Other things, good communication is super important, especially if you're doing this in a team. Again, because of the real-time nature of it, you don't have time to resolve communication problems. You don't have time to go back and forth oh, sorry, I misunderstood you. I was trying to say X, you probably thought I meant Y. The trade's gone by then. So you have to communicate right the first time. And so, being comfortable saying extremely directly and kind of quickly what it is you think is important for the other person to hear, hearing what they're saying, and then immediately updating on it. It's really bad to be stubborn because, again, you don't have time to budge someone from their stubbornness. The trade's gone by then. So you have to be able to kind of update really quickly without needing too much, outside pressure on that. So I think those are sort of two pretty unique things about the real-time aspect. And then, of course, there's also, what happens when you're not training in real-time, when you're instead sort of building the models and the systems. And there, you do have time. And so there it's much more about, thinking, being able to think about a system as fully and rigorously as you can, understanding all different pieces of it, putting them together, thinking about, what's the right way to model this situation? Not just throwing a bunch of numbers at something and seeing what happens, but thinking all right, here's sort of the core effect that's going on here. Because of that, these are sort of the core variables and what, general form I think they should take. And now I can run my study once I've sort of mapped out, everything except for these variables. And being able to kind of iterate over something, talk it over with people, that's sort of way more important for sort of the model building side of things. I think that, it depends a lot on how crazy things are. When things are crazy, what happened with that big offer, we're just sitting there trading, shouting back and forth, trying to figure out what to do, trying to, quickly move capital around to the places we need to get it to, quickly iterating on our thoughts and trying to decide what the right trade is to do then. When things are slower, though, when volatility and volumes are low, then, it's more about, monitoring our systems, thinking, that trade's not exactly what I would have done. What do I think our system's missing? Yeah, probably it's, trying, it doesn't understand that, we think this thing's probably going to drift up over the next week, so, we want to be pretty unaggressive selling it, or something like that, so I'm going to go tweak some parameters to, move it, kind of marginally in that direction. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of, often the pattern that you're going through when things are slower.
Most of the day is spent doing that?
Yeah, it's certainly by time most of the day is spent doing that, and when things are really slow, often we'll just be working on other projects. We'll have trading up in the background, we'll be monitoring it, but, most of our systems will just be doing something reasonable, and we'll be sort of, working on more of a long-term quant project.
And a couple of key terms that you're throwing out there, what fading tether and those sort of things.
Yeah.
Can you run through a few of those?
Yeah, so, I think that we think about a lot is, what should, what do we think these assets are worth? And fading is just the word that we use to describe shifting our view of what a thing is worth. And so if we're hey, we think our system is, overvaluing tether right now, then we'll fade our system down a little bit. And we think that it's sort of undervaluing tether, we'll fade it up. And so that's sort of one of the toggles that we have, is just and it's a pretty kind of brute force toggle. It's not really necessarily explaining to our bot what it's misunderstanding. It's more of well, we don't have time to explain everything. So for now, let's just get it to the right conclusion, and then later we'll go back and see why we think our model wasn't coming to the same conclusion we were in the first place. That's tough. The truth is, it's very, very difficult because if there are sort of public course materials on this, those trades would all go away because everyone would know exactly how to do them. So there aren't really that many things that you can study like at university that are super helpful. I think computer science is probably the closest, just because even if it's not the core of what a lot of quants are doing, it is an extremely useful skill for it, and so and for a lot of other jobs, obviously. So I don't know. I think that's a pretty good default option. Outside of that, I think it's really hard to study for this outside of like real tutoring from someone who knows what they're doing, or if you want to try and do this on your own, really being self-critical and doing trying as hard as you can to learn and to teach yourself, as opposed to just trying one thing and hoping it works.
So you can't really study for it. It's kind of like learning how to code. You could go study at some prestigious university, but if you just were a really good coder, similar thing.
I think that's basically right, except that whereas sort of coding is a pretty prominent and profession that's sort of all over the place, like quant trading is both. There are way fewer people who do it, and it's way more secluded and hidden from the public view. So. I think what I'd say is try it out and see how you like it. Don't feel like you definitely will or won't going in, because often it's hard for people to predict whether or not they're going to like this. And what I'd say is just, find a good place to intern at, do that for a summer, and, if you really like it, dive into it. And if you don't like it, that's totally fine. It's a weird job, and try something else.
Makes sense.